Let's take a look at the worst punishment ever inflicted on a woman in ancient Rome. Jesus. Oh, fuck.
The clinking of chains echoed through the damp corridors of Carthage prison when two women were dragged into the deepest dungeons of the Roman Empire. One was noble, the other a slave. One clutched a newborn baby in her arms, the other carried a child in her womb. Both shared something that Roman authorities considered more dangerous than any weapon: the Christian faith. In the year 203 Anno Domini, Perpetua and Felicitas would face one of the most brutal punishments ever conceived by the human mind, a spectacle of horror that would last for hours under the scorching sun of Carthage's amphitheater, before thousands of bloodthirsty spectators. Their story is not merely an account of extreme suffering, but a testament to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit when confronted with absolute cruelty. Roman Africa in the 3rd century was a cauldron of religious and social tensions. Carthage, Rome's former rival, had become one of the empire's most prosperous provinces, but also one of its most restless. Christianity was growing rapidly among all social classes, from slaves to nobility, challenging the religious and political foundations of Roman power. Emperor Septimius Severus, himself born in Africa, knew well the dangers of this new religion that preached loyalty to a heavenly king above the earthly emperor. During his reign, local persecutions intensified throughout Roman Africa, possibly encouraged by regional governors eager to demonstrate their loyalty to the emperor through the suppression of Christians. Vibia Perpetua was born into the aristocracy of Carthage, daughter of one of the region's most influential families. At 22 years old, she was a young mother who had recently given birth to a baby and enjoyed all the privileges her social position could offer. Educated in the finest Roman traditions, she spoke Latin and Greek fluently, knew classical literature, and had been raised to assume her role as a respectable matron of society. However, something in her young heart yearned for a purpose greater than the social conventions of her time. When she encountered Christian teachings, she found the answers she had been seeking. Felicitas represented the opposite extreme of the Roman social ladder.
This is
As a
during the
slave in
Third
Perpetua's
Punic
household,
War.
she possessed no legal rights nor prospects of freedom.
Oh,
At 20 years old, she was 8 months pregnant when the events that would forever
146
change her
BC,
life
around that
began
time.
to unfold. Despite her servile condition, she possessed remarkable intelligence and an indomitable spirit that impressed everyone around her. When Christian teachings reached Perpetua's house, Felicitas embraced them with a passion that surprised even her mistress, finding in the new faith a dignity that Roman society had never offered her. Conversion to Christianity in that era was not a simple or swift process. Future Christians underwent an extensive preparation period called the catechumenate, during which they studied the scriptures, learned fundamentals of the faith, and prepared for baptism. Perpetua and Felicitas were catechumens. They had not yet been officially baptized, though they possibly received baptism
All religions
while
kind of
already in
have
prison.
this sort of
Along with
system
them,
if you want
other
to
young
convert,
people shared
right?
the same journey: Saturninus, Secundulus, Revocatus, and their catechist, Satyrus.
Basically, if you
become a
want to
spiritual
join the
guide
religion, you
for the
have to
group.
do these steps.
The arrest came suddenly and violently on a March morning in the year 203 Anno Domini. Roman soldiers invaded the residences where the catechumens gathered, dragging them from their beds and brutally separating them from their families. Local persecutions were being enforced with relentless severity, and provincial governors competed with each other to demonstrate their loyalty to the emperor through the repression of Christians. Perpetua was torn from the arms of her crying baby, while Felicitas, in her advanced state of pregnancy, was pushed and kicked by the soldiers who took her to prison. Conditions in Carthage prison were deliberately inhumane. The Christians were thrown into an underground dungeon, where darkness was total and the air barely breathable. Dozens of prisoners crowded into a space meant for few, without adequate ventilation, sanitation, or privacy. The heat was suffocating during the day and the cold penetrating during the night. Food consisted of rotten scraps thrown on the floor, and water was rationed to the point of causing constant dehydration. Many prisoners died before even reaching trial, which was exactly the authorities' intention. It was in this hellish environment that Perpetua began writing her diary, one of the most extraordinary documents of early Christian literature, and one of the first known writings by a woman in Western history. With courage that defies modern comprehension,
Oh
she
my God! It
recorded
was a
not only
woman
the
that
physical
started. Oh
horrors she faced,
my God! It was
but
one
also
of the
her
first
mystical
women. Oh my God.
visions and the spiritual transformation she experienced. Her words, preserved through the centuries, offer a unique window into the mind of a woman facing the most terrible death for her deepest convictions. Perpetua's father, a pagan man who loved
Oh yeah,
her deeply,
it wasn't
made
just
multiple
men who
desperate
were
attempts
fucking
to save
tortured
her.
too. The
He
fucking
visited
women
her
and
in
children
prison
were
repeatedly,
tortured as well.
begging her to renounce Christianity and save not only her own life, but also
Yeah,
the family's
they
honor.
did it to everyone. They
In a
didn't give a
particularly touching scene
right? No
recorded in her
discrimination.
diary, he threw himself at her feet, calling her daughter instead of lady, a radical reversal of social roles that demonstrated the
Today's day
desperation
and
of a
age,
father
man,
watching his daughter choose
you
death.
got a lot of
Perpetua, with a broken heart but unwavering
like
conviction,
emotional guilt,
consistently
bull
refused
crap,
his pleas,
blaming, and
explaining that she could not deny her faith
blackmailing.
even to save her own life.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, Felicitas faced additional anguish. According to Roman law, pregnant women
I
could
mean,
not
from
be
time to time, you
executed
still have those
until they
incidents,
gave
right?
birth.
The one,
This meant that if she did not
the guy
deliver
that
before
killed
the date
the
set for the public games,
the
she would
cop
be
that was
separated
not
from her
even
companions
remotely
in faith
close to the
and
dude's
executed alone later.
son's
For
case.
a woman who had found a spiritual family
Just
among
attacked
the
a
catechumens,
right.
the prospect of dying in isolation
Kills a random
was
cop
almost
just
unbearable.
because he was angry.
The entire group united in fervent prayer that she might
He
give birth in time
wanted revenge
to share
for his
martyrdom
son, so he
with her
just took it
brothers
out
in
on
faith.
some random cop.
The answer came dramatically. Felicitas went into labor just 2 days before the date set for execution. The pains were excruciating, intensified by malnutrition, dehydration, and extreme emotional stress. During childbirth, her cries of agony echoed through the prison, prompting a sadistic guard to mock her. "If you scream like this now, what will you do when you face the beasts in the amphitheater?" Felicitas's response, recorded by the companions who witnessed the scene, became one of the most powerful statements in Christian literature. "Now it is I who suffer, but out there, another will be in me, and he will suffer for me, because I will suffer for him." The trial was a judicial farce that lasted only a few hours. Procurator Hilarianus, charged with executing the imperial edict, offered the prisoners one last opportunity to save their lives through sacrifice to the Roman gods. One by one, they refused categorically.
Oh.
When Perpetua's turn came, the magistrate appealed specifically to her maternal feelings, reminding her that her baby would be orphaned. Her response was simple and definitive: "I will not sacrifice." With those words, she sealed not only her own fate, but also demonstrated a strength of character that impressed even her enemies. The sentence was pronounced with theatrical pomp. The Christians would be exposed to wild beasts during public games celebrating the birthday of Geta, son of Emperor Septimius Severus. This was not simply an execution, but a carefully orchestrated spectacle to humiliate the condemned and terrorize anyone who might sympathize with Christianity. The games would last all day, with different animals being released against the prisoners in successive waves, deliberately prolonging the suffering to maximize the crowd's entertainment.
The gladiatorial...
The 7th of March in the year 203 Anno Domini dawned clear and hot
arena
over Carthage.
where they would just
Crowds gathered at the amphitheater from the
throw
earliest hours,
people
eager
in
for the
there and
spectacle
then
to come.
throw the
Street vendors
emaciated
offered food and drink.
animals or animals that were
Gamblers
like
made their
hungry or
predictions
like
about how long each prisoner would
enraged,
survive,
right?
and the stands seethed with the morbid excitement that characterized Roman games. The amphitheater, with
This
capacity
was
for tens of
during
thousands of spectators, perhaps up
193
to
to
25,000
211
people,
AD.
was completely packed, including
I
local
think they said
authorities,
it.
prosperous merchants, and common citizens, united by their appetite for violence.
Yeah.
When the
As he said,
prisoners were led into
Septimius,
the arena, a remarkable transformation
Severus or
occurred.
Sybaris?
Instead of the terror and despair the crowd expected to see, the Christians entered singing hymns and with expressions of serene joy on their faces. Perpetua, in particular, radiated a confidence that confused the spectators. She refused to wear the ritual garments traditionally forced upon the condemned, tunics dedicated to pagan gods, declaring that she had made a contract with the authorities to die as a Christian, not as a pagan. The horror began gradually, following the macabre script typical of Roman games. First, the men were exposed to wild animals. A wild boar was released against Saturnus, bears and leopards against Revocatus and Saturninus. The animals, deliberately deprived of food to increase their aggressiveness, attacked with brutal fury. Secundulus died before being taken to the arena, thus spared from the final spectacle. The roars of the animals mixed with the screams of the crowd, creating a cacophony of violence that echoed off the stone walls of the amphitheater. For the women, the spectacle organizers reserved special cruelty. A wild cow, chosen specifically for its symbolism, was released against Perpetua and Felicitas. The animal, confused and enraged by the noise of the crowd, attacked Perpetua first, goring her and hurling her violently through the air.
Oof.
She fell hard on her back with brutal force, but immediately concerned herself with rearranging her clothes to maintain decency, showing remarkable presence of mind amid the chaos. When she saw Felicitas fallen and injured, she ran to help her stand, demonstrating solidarity and love, even in the final moments. The crowd, initially bloodthirsty, began to be disturbed by the extraordinary dignity of the two women. Instead of begging for mercy or showing terror, they supported each other and continued praying aloud. Some spectators began to murmur uncomfortably, involuntarily touched by the courage they witnessed. Roman propaganda intended to show Christians as cowards and traitors, but the spectacle was producing the opposite effect.
Correct.
When it became clear that the animals would not complete the job quickly, the organizers decided to accelerate the process. The condemned were brought to the center of the arena to receive the final blow from the gladiators' swords. But even in this supreme moment, the Christians maintained their extraordinary composure. They embraced each other, exchanged the traditional
so
kiss of
basically
peace,
back in these times it
calmly
was the
positioned
pagans
themselves
versus
to
the
receive
Christians.
death. Felicitas was the first to be beheaded. The experienced gladiator executed the blow with professional precision, and she died
Polyistic
instantly. Perpetua, however, was less fortunate.
people versus
The gladiator assigned to
the
execute her
soul
was a
religion
nervous
people.
novice, and his first blow missed the target, striking her between the collarbones. Perpetua screamed in pain, the first sound of suffering she had emitted during the entire ordeal. But then, in a final demonstration of control over her own destiny, she guided the trembling hand of the young gladiator to the correct position on her neck, helping him complete the execution. The impact of the martyrdom of Perpetua and Felicitas reverberated far beyond the walls of Carthage's amphitheater. Their deaths did not produce the intimidating effect that Roman authorities had expected. Instead, their example of courage inspired waves of conversions to Christianity throughout Roman Africa and beyond. Perpetua's diary, preserved and copied by admiring Christians, became one of the most influential texts of the early church, read in Christian communities from Spain to Syria. The brutality of the punishment inflicted on these two young women a noble mother and a pregnant slave, exposed the barbaric nature of a system that confused entertainment with extermination. Even by Roman standards, accustomed to the violence of gladiatorial games, the spectacle was exceptionally cruel. The deliberate choice to expose women to wild animals, deliberately prolong their suffering, and force them to die as public entertainment represented one of the lowest points of Roman civilization. More than 1800 years later, Perpetua's words still echo with extraordinary power. Her diary offers a unique window into the mind of a woman facing the most terrible death for her deepest convictions. Her refusal to sacrifice her principles, even in the face of torture and death,
Yeah, she died on her
established a standard
sword.
of moral integrity that continues to inspire people of all religions
Live by
and
the sword,
cultures.
die by the sword, yeah.
The story of Perpetua and Felicitas reminds us that the true measure of a civilization lies not in its monuments or conquests, but in how it treats its most vulnerable members and in its
Perpetua and
tolerance for those
Felicitas.
who think differently. The martyrdom of these two extraordinary women remains as an eternal testament to humanity's
So this
capacity
story.
to transcend fear, pain, and even
So
death
18
when guided by deep
to
convictions and true
203.
love.
Yeah. Yeah, the Romans did some fucked up things. Alright, there you have it. And there's more fucked up things on what history has. Back in the... let's just say the Dark Ages, when there wasn't a lot of rules and it was more... You were a lot more criticized, if you will, back then. Now you have a lot more freedom. Back then, you didn't have freedom. Anyways, there you have it. Untold Tortures. If you want to check out more, it has a lot more. It's like a AI voice, but yeah, basically they just take a bunch of information of certain specific events, certain stories, right, like this one, and compound it into a short little video. There you have it.